invite Professor Kamala Sankaran ma'am to please start the discussion.
Thank you very much. Thank you to MARG, Multiple Action Research Group. Good evening, Seema ji, Mr. Noor, and also Pankuri for this opportunity to speak today in this panel on impact on workers from the informal sector and the current migrant labor crisis from a gender perspective. I have 10 minutes, so I'm going to broadly just try and cover certain points.
Ma'am, we can't see you.
You can't see me?
Yes, ma'am.
Can we request others to unmute their...
Yeah.
Now, Pankuri,
Yes, ma'am.
am I now visible and audible?
Yeah,
Yes,
you are.
Yes,
You are.
Audible, ma'am.
You are.
So thank you to Marg once again this evening, and also greetings to my co-panelists as well as all the participants. Now, this evening we're talking about the informal sector, and we're also talking about migrants. And I think that we must be clear that India and the Indian government has been collecting data on these sectors, on these parts of the working population for a long time. It is not the case that we do not have data. India has enormous data on people working in informal sector. We have the NSS that has generates regular data. We have the 68th round. We also have the Ministry of Labor brings out periodic labor force surveys. And so there is a lot of data. The point is, are we going to use that data in order to identify and help people? Now, what is that informal sector? The ILO uses another expression called the informal economy. And since all of us gathered this evening are people who are deeply interested, I'm going to spend a minute or two that I think it's very important that we know what these expressions mean. An informal sector is a unit of economic unit which is unregistered. The enterprise is unregistered. But the informal economy consists of people who work. It could be in the formal sector or in the informal sector, but people who do not have proper labor rights. Most importantly, who do not have social security. But they could have may not have a written contract. That is, they are informal. Other words that are used are precarious, etc. But India, we use the word informal. Okay, earlier we used to use the word unorganized. So I think we should go beyond that informal sector to look at actually workers who are working. Just for a moment, since all of us who are gathered this evening are people who are interested, and this is a technical subject and we must give it the attention and the scrutiny it deserves. You could be working in a public sector unit, which as a unit is in the formal sector, but there could be many informal workers. There could be contract workers. There could be workers engaged through a contractor that we call outsourced workers. So you will have this very odd situation in India that the number of informal workers in the formal sector is steadily increasing. Security guards are outsourced. Workers in the shop floor could be unorganized and they could be working with proper permanent staff. You find this happening increasingly in automobile. You find it in various sectors. This informal sector, the data tells us, and this is Indian data, I'm not talking about ILO data, tells us that people who are in the informal sector, and from where do I get the data? I get the data from the National Commission for Enterprises in the Unorganized Sector, the Government of India report of 2007, along with additional data which comes to us from NSS as well as the periodic labor force surveys. I would urge all of us who are working in this area to look at that data, and the numbers vary. Last year's economic survey that the government brought out in 2019 and the economic survey the year before that, 2018, also gives us data, and the data varies between 85 to 90% depending on how you look at it. Okay, we have a large number of people. Now, in addition, there are migrants. And migrants, as you know, I remember Ms. Lata initially pointed out that she looked at the 2001 census data and she gave us some figures. And she also correctly pointed out that there are interstate migrant workers, but if you look at the number of migrants in the 2011 census data, bulk of them are intra-state migrants. And I think this is a very important point to bear in mind. Only people who have some better connections, who have at least some amount of money, are willing to leave their state and go to Mumbai or go to Delhi. Mostly migrate within the state. 3/4 of some 400 million people in India are migrating within the state. And the interstate migrant workers, which I know that Seema ji talked about it, deals with interstate migrant. But remember that millions and millions of people are intrastate, okay, within the state. That itself is a very big leap for people, because you're leaving your agriculture and then you're coming to work in an informal sector, in a small workshop, in a cycle repair shop, in a small canteen, or in a small hotel. That unit itself is not registered. Or you may be lucky enough to become an informal worker in a formal sector. You may become a security guard in a factory. You may become a badli worker in a textile mill. So there are all these kinds. So the enormous range of people working in the informal economy is very large. The other point that has been made this evening, so therefore, if you look at migrant workers, you will notice that according to the data, and this is all coming to me from only government data, that according to studies, 4 sectors are responsible for engaging women. Agriculture. There is a large amount of migration of women in agriculture, which some of the earlier speakers called a seasonal migration, circular migration. You go, you harvest, and you come back. And there is almost like 20% of migration within India is for agriculture. The growing sector is for paid domestic work. When you come from a rural area to the cities, and remember, India is becoming urbanized very, very fast. As of today, more than 50% of India's working population is now in Group A, Group B, Group C, Type A, Type B, Type C, I mean, depending on what you use, those kinds of cities. And the first employment that comes up is either in construction or it is in domestic work. And these have a large number of women. We have construction. We also have a huge number, 11% of migrant women working in brick kilns. I know that some of my earlier speakers have been activists working in the construction industry, and it will do us well to remember that the Building and Construction Workers Act covers even brick kiln units. Those must also be covered. And we have millions of people working in brick kilns. So these are the sectors where more and more women go. I just wanted to say this because I think it's also useful to have a very quick mapping exercise. So we have a large number of migrants. Most migrants are intrastate. We have also a large number of interstate migrants. In India, we only talk in millions, right? We have such a huge workforce. We have almost 100 million interstate migrant workers. And we have like 300 million intrastate migrant workers. And the women in that are mainly engaged in agriculture, domestic work, construction work, brick kilns, okay, women. Men are, of course, in other sectors. Now, how is it that I would like to, because my time is also running out, what is it, the key points that I would like to put forward this evening? First, I think it's important to recognize that under our constitution, everybody has a fundamental right to migrate. You cannot put borders and tell people you cannot migrate. They have a right to migrate. If they want to go to Mumbai, they can. If they want to come to Delhi, they can. If they want to go back to their hometown, they can. And it is their individual freedom to migrate for economic betterment. And no government can stop that process. They are free to go and settle anywhere and buy and build a house. I say this because there is always a rise in nationalism that we don't want migrants. Why should migrants come? It should not be that because we have got this issue of migrants that we will prevent people from migrating. Historically, people have migrated to improve. Migrants contribute something like 10% of the GDP. And if you look at studies, while of course this time people who have gone back have become impoverished, by and large, people who migrate improve their lot, because when they go back, other than Manrega, they have no other form of employment. Okay, so people want to migrate. Number two, this right to migrate comes from Article 19(1)(d) of the Constitution, which says that all citizens have a right to move freely within India. And this is an important right, and I don't think we should ever dilute or lose that right. They also have a right to, now once they have a right to migrate, there is also a duty, a corresponding duty of the state to provide some social security. The Supreme Court has said that everybody in India under Article 21 has a right to life. And that right to life means that they have a right to live with dignity. And if you have to live with dignity, then a minimum of social security is necessary. That social security comes because you have worked. So a lot of, what is the way we go forward now? We have a right to minimum of health care. Whether we work or we don't work, everybody should have a right to minimum public health. And we have seen that those states that have better public health available to anybody, whether you work or don't work, whether you're disabled, whether you're old, whether you're retired, are able to have a better health system. So we need to have that citizen's right to health. But we also need to have a right to social security. At the current point in time, for the formal sector, the social security, the important social security is the Employees Provident Fund Act, which gives you a lump sum at the end of the year. And part of it also comes to you as a monthly pensionary payment. Okay, so there's a lump sum provident fund and there is a pension payment. In addition, you also get employees social insurance, ESIC, and that gives you certain other important rights. You have the right to get medical care in ESI hospital. And the big struggle of unorganized workers or informal workers. Yes, please. Should I continue?
Something went. Pankhudi, can you ask everybody to mute their mics, please?
Can I continue?
Yes, please.
Okay. Now, so the ESI. Now, we have seen that the ESI, which used to have rather high thresholds, you must have worked so many days, the unit must be covered. Because of a lot of pressure from domestic workers, there's some downside to it. I'm not saying it's all very good, but sometimes domestic workers have been enrolled in ESI. The problem is they've had to pay the premium, both for the employers and employees. That's an issue. I accept that. But other than that, there have been other initiatives. For example, Maharashtra has a domestic workers welfare fund board. Other states have unorganized workers welfare boards, and we know that the southern states have generally done better. And you can go and enroll, and then you will get at least some welfare benefits. Some are sectoral, like BD workers. Some are generally state-wise. Now, COVID, I think, has brought us before us a very, very important issue. What is the way in which we should go forward? I know Seema ji had said, and it's a remarkable study that Marg had done on interstate migrant workers right at that time when Vasudha Dagamwar ji was part of the Marg, etc. And if those of you who are interested, I urge you to go to the Parliament of India website and see the Parliamentary Standing Committee report on the Occupational Safety and Health Code, which was released just 1 month before the COVID in February. And what does the Parliament Standing Committee recommend? It says that the Interstate Migrant Workmen's Act does not cover all migrant workmen. It covers a very small number, only those who are recruited by a contractor. 99% of migrant workers come on their own. I think Lataji was pointing about the family will migrate. After that, maybe the women will also start working. They are not covered under the Interstate Migrant Workmen's Act. So the question before us is, should we now go back to having a separate law for migrant? Is it not better, and this is my opinion, that we become part of the code and then make special protection for the rights that we have already won, that the workers have already won? Because the moment you have separate laws, we go back to a scene where there are 40, 50 labor laws and you need some expert who will know everything, but bulk of the people will be unclear which law applies to them, which law does not apply. That's not a good way to be. Laws should be simple that everybody knows. The worker knows, the activist knows, the organizer knows. It should not be the domain of just some handful of experts. It should be available to all. So therefore, with this in mind, what I would suggest is, we already have a code on wages, which has been enacted. And that code on wages makes minimum wages applicable to everybody. I agree that it's very, very unfortunate that people are even thinking of suspending this minimum wage. This is a very minimum. And I also agree with the previous speakers that just because food has been given, that is not the minimum wage. Minimum wage is more than that. The food component is only one part of
it.
You have many other components. You have a bit of social security, you need to have a bit of leisure, you need to have education, you need to have healthcare. All these are components of a minimum wage. So just because somebody fed you, it doesn't mean that you don't need your minimum wage. You do need your minimum wage. We have a code. We also have another code which is pending in Parliament, which is of social security. We have another law called Unorganized Workers Social Security Act, which has been included as part of this new Social Security Code bill. Okay. And that unorganized workers, I completely agree with my other co-panelists that registration is necessary. When is registration necessary? Not just when you leave your home state and come. Anybody has a right to get registered. And that is a right. If the government does not register you, you must have an avenue to go and file a complaint. It's not just as a benefit, it's a right which you can go to court and get a remedy for. So let me be brief. What I wish to say is that we must recognize that we have a right. When number two, to migrate. Number two, if one is an unorganized worker, meaning thereby you could be in a unit which is informal, or you could be in the formal sector but not getting all the rights which other workers, permanent workers are getting, we must have the right to get registered under the Unorganized Workers Board. Because the experience of the Building and Construction Workers Board shows that that board maintains better records. If at all money has been transferred successfully in this COVID, it has happened to building and construction workers because the database is there. In the same manner, the Unorganized Workers Social Security Board must be there. Third, while the Interstate Migrant Workmen's Act is there, I think it has such structural problems. We must deal with all migrants, but all migrants who are working in a unit are also first and foremost workers in that factory. Domestic workers must be recognized as workers. There are many states where domestic workers are not being registered as trade unions because they think वो तो घर में काम करते हैं, ये तो घर को ही हम इंडस्ट्री क्या बनाएंगे. This is not the way to look at it. You could have a household enterprise and the domestic worker must be registered either with the Domestic Workers Board if the state law has it, otherwise with the Unorganized Workers Board. And then I come to the largest sector, which is agricultural workers. Agricultural workers have suffered the maximum and they are the most invisible because they don't even come to the urban areas. The journalists and social media even doesn't cover them. They don't even, oftentimes the minimum wages you will see are the lowest in construction, road construction, and in agriculture. We must have registration. We must activate that unorganized workers social security board. We must campaign that people get registered. I am in agreement with many of my co-panelists that unless you are recognized as a worker, and that means the law covers you, there is some registration which happens, which is other than the statistics recognizing you. There must be a registration. And that registration, EPF or ESI, if you're working in a formal sector and the unit is covered. And if you're not working in that formal sector and you're working in the informal sector, in the formal unit, if you're an informal worker in the formal sector, the demand must be cover them under EPF and ESI, because the unit is formal, the workers informal, cover them under EPF and ESI. But if you're working in an informal sector, that is, it's not under EPF. Why is it not under EPF? Because a threshold of 2010, you may be working in a smaller unit. Then in which case, the Unorganized Workers Social Security Act must be activated. Okay. And I think that we must be clear that we do have the data. We must not say that there is no, why is it that nobody knows about migrants? Because nobody has bothered to register. No action is taken when the employer, the Contract Labor Act says units must be registered, contractors must be licensed. This must be only 5% of units and 5% of contractors are registered and licensed. So we must have inspections. I, for personally speaking, do not agree that Inspector Raj aa jayega. What Inspector Raj? We need people to go and know कि क्या inspection हुआ है कि नहीं, are they registered or not. So I think that these are minimum steps. We must have these laws. These laws must be implemented. And if the government is going to go ahead and go further with the codes, fine. But those codes must also be supervised. And supervised by whom? Not just by the government, but by workers and by the trade unions also. I'll stop here.
Thank you so much, ma'am, firstly for giving us the exact details, which is very much necessary to have the knowledge of. I do agree that there should be laws which shall be simple and accessible to those people for whom those laws are made. And I agree with all the panelists that there must be some uniform registration system so that these people can be identified. Thank you so much, ma'am, for your valuable suggestions. Yeah, can you hear me? Hello?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you so much, ma'am. Thank you so much, speakers, for this insightful and informative discussion. And we will try our best to put all the valuable suggestions in our report and send it to the Ministry of Labor, Niti Aayog, NCW, Ministry of Women and Child, so that we can put up our views to them. Thank you so much. And as we are actually very much constrained of time, we have actually crossed our time. So I'll just take 2 questions for the speakers. Is that okay? Okay, Devika? Devika? You there?
Am I audible now?
Yeah. You can put forward the questions of the participants to the speakers. We'll have 2 questions as we are running late.
Okay. Thank you to all the speakers, and this was a very important and a very invigorating discussion. And there are a lot of questions, some very specific and some general. I think there's a lot of discontent among people and the participants here as well towards the silence that the government has shown towards the migrant crisis and the apparent indifference towards what is happening. So there are quite a few questions where people have asked what more the government can do. So this question I would leave open to all the panelists. Is there what can we expect the government to do? What more measures can we expect the government to put forward in this time? For example, we talked about how food is the only thing that is basically being made available, as Ms. Lata pointed out right at the beginning, that there is such a lack of menstrual hygiene products. So what else is it that we can make available? I understand that this panel discussion in itself talks about the greater issues at play and things that will bring about greater changes, long-term changes. But right now we know that there are people suffering from a day-to-day basis. And we can definitely talk about what else we can make available to the people and how we can make sure that a large mass of people can avail such benefits. So we can start with Ms. Lata, because you already pointed out one particular item that may be made available. If there's anything else that you would like to add to it.
No.
Yes, ma'am, you're audible.
Yeah. Actually, on this particular issue, what you have raised the question, or other than that, what government could do?
This particular issue in this particular question, let's talk about what amenities, what basic things can be distributed right now, so that right now during the lockdown.
Actually, they were expecting why different agency, revenue department and industry, so many stakeholders, why they have to involve. The panchayat, sarpanch or the ward member, they know their locality and the demographic person, those who are migrant. Because the migrant from various industry and various state. So why not they can channelize through the sarpanch, panchayat president or ward member or councillor. This will be very better because everyone will get benefited through one card and one PDS system. And at the same time, they are expecting more on the maternal care and healthcare services and this reproductive healthcare services. So these also can be channelized through the village, or in the city also corporation, municipality, the councillor is there. So they can reach out everyone, because few percent they get benefit from the one industry, but many of us, the unorganized informal sector, they left over. So this is the suggestion.
Of course.
Thank you,
ma'am. This is a question for Professor Sankaran. This was posted by Arpit Tyagi, and he wants to know about the registration process that you talked about in quite a lot of detail. Since a lot of, or actually a large portion of our migrant workers, as well as the other workers in the unorganized sector, are illiterate, what can we do to make sure that they are aware of such a registration process, and how can we make sure that this goes further and maximum number of workers can be included in the process?
Thank you for the question. I think it's useful to look at the Employees Provident Fund Act. And that act says that it covers those who are directly employed as well as those who are employed via contractors. Quite often, contractors who engage what we call loosely contract labor do not get them enrolled into the EPF scheme, and they are entitled to the EPF scheme. So for example, Shehnaz ji was talking about home-based workers, and I'm sure she will also give insight on this. Home-based BD workers who are engaged through a contractor are also entitled to provident benefit. So those who are informal workers engaged through a contractor working in a large unit which is covered under EPF. So we must find out whether that unit, which is the ultimate employer, or what we call principal employer in India, is covered under EPF or ESI. If so, the contract labor engaged through a contractor is also entitled to EPF and ESI, and they must try and get their workers registered. If the unit where they are working is not covered by EPF and ESI, that is, the unit itself is an informal unit, then there is the Unorganized Workers Social Security Law, which is an all India central law which one can go and get enrolled. It's hardly been made active by the government, which is very unfortunate. Third, if you happen to be in a state which in addition also has a Unorganized Workers Welfare Act. So some of the states have it, some do not. Okay. For example, Delhi does not have, but Tamil Nadu has, West Bengal has, Kerala has. Then you could also get the worker enrolled in that unorganized workers. They have different names, and find out and get the worker enrolled there and pay the monthly premium that will give you at least some kind of welfare benefits. Okay. So that's what I mean by registration. If one is in the construction workers business, then all building workers should be registered. Now, this is something that you will find, unfortunately, that though despite the best efforts of trade unions working in the field, there are many, many construction workers who are not registered. And as a result of which, there could not be direct benefit transferred to them from during these COVID times. So I think for the moment, I'll just say this.
Thank you, ma'am. Ms. Kiran Singh is a board member with MARG, and she would like to put in her 2 cents. Ma'am, please go ahead.
Yeah, am I audible?
Yes, you are.
MARG has been working on this labor issue for quite a long. I would invite your suggestions. In fact, I'm not putting any questions. How MARG can go forward with the issue of the migrant labor, because this time I think it's a time where it has gone beyond our control of the government, beyond control. So much apathy is there around. So I would like to have some input on that issue, how to go together on this kind of issue at COVID-19.
Ms. Shehnaz, would you like to take this question?
Because everyone has spoken so well, but this issue has to be addressed. How to go together at this time? Because for me, finding an answer is a big problem. We can talk on so many issues, but today's issue is something grave. Many states talking about a very weird thing. We won't allow our migrant laborers to go out of the state, or we can't take our laborers back. All these things are going on. So what I feel that there should be some concrete common features where we can work together in future.
Yeah. I would like to.
Yes, please, ma'am.
This is a very grave issue, actually. Very well pointed out by Kiranji, and very well explained by Kamla ma'am, who has got a vast experience. Yeah, very rightly said about the Unorganized Social Security Act that she was talking about, 2008. But it is not being followed very well in the northern or the eastern states, except in few states of the south. Now, if we talk about the registration, it's not a very easy task. It does not, and even there is a lack of the trade unions also, lacking on their part also, that they failed to address to the unorganized workers issues from the very beginning. Then what ma'am, Kamla ma'am was talking about was that there is a data of the unorganized workers, yes. But the last data, ma'am, as I've seen, is of 2011. If I'm wrong, can you just correct me? But after 2011, there has been no such data of the unorganized sector of the informal economy. So what very well has been asked by Kiran ji is that how we should go forward. It is a very, very difficult.
Can I say something?
Yeah.
May I
Yes,
ask?
ma'am.
See, what can we do is the issue, and for me, it's very clear. I think that it's not something that it went out of hand. It was just very bad planning, and you have allowed employers to get away by not paying wages and not implementing the law. And the minute you don't, if they don't get paid wages and they don't have anything to eat, people will move out. You have to remind I think we'll have to go back to basics and remind government that changing any labor law or not allowing new movement is violation of the constitution. What the UP government is doing is violating Article 23, that's against exploitation. How can you remove minimum wages? How can you extend working hours? How can you stop people from moving out, like Karnataka was saying? I think we'll have to just work really hard. Besides the grassroots work that you need to do is ensure this, but then what are you going to do, Kiran, if the courts are also willing to do away with this basic protection?
No, that's the reason.
Also we have to thrust on, it is the government's duty if there is, and it is done all over. Why is it only in this country that this has happened?
Ma'am, sorry I'm interrupting you. Professor Kamla Sankaran has also to leave at 5:30
Yes.
because, so can we just conclude it, ma'am? I'm really sorry I interrupted you. I can't hear you, ma'am.
I'm just saying if Ms. Kamla Sankaran wants to add to this, actually it'd be very good to get her perspective on this.
You know, I mean, you're all very experienced at Marg. So, but it really seems to me that this current crisis shows the importance of, you know, I think we need to go beyond that Interstate Migrant Workers Act and ask for some, you know, minimum threshold of social security, that anybody who works should be entitled to some social security. Whether you work 1 day or 5 days or 10 days, that these filters, like how many employees are there? How long have you worked? Are you working in this capacity before you get entitled to social security is not correct. Most people in India are self-employed. Many people who work periodically, then they have to go away. And when it comes to women, all their life cycle problems also are there. They come and go from the labor market. And therefore, I think that this is absolutely necessary. I would also like to just respond a little bit to Shehnaz ji. Ma'am, I think it's also, you know, apart from the 2011 census, there has been, if you went into the Labor Bureau, there is something called the Periodic Labor Force Survey, 1718. In addition, the Economic Survey, you know, of 2018, 2019, Government of India has also given us fresh data on, so I think those would also help a great deal in the question that
with all due respect, yes ma'am, I've gone through that also, but there also the basic home-based workers and the domestic workers, most of the larger chunk has been ignored because they have not been registered over there. That's the problem. That's why I'm talking about more about the registration.
Yes, that is true.
मैंने लगाई है, वो 29 तारीख को हमको बताएंगे.
Hello.
There should be a mass campaigning and advocacy, and people like a joint effort by the trade unions, by the CSOs and the NGOs. We should talk about a charter of demand for these agricultural workers. We should talk about their social security and about these contract workers. And it should go from a united platform.
Yes, I agree to that, because in COVID-19, this problem has suddenly erupted. People were saying there is no migrant labor problem, laborers are fine, they have got they're misusing law. All this was coming up, but this COVID-19, I think, had raised a very important question of the migrant labor, which is still alive. We can see it alive, the apathy of the people. Yes, I agree with all of you. But we have to sort out or talk upon it till a certain extent, where some concrete things can be done by all of us.
Thank you so much, ma'am. I think we shall conclude the discussion. for today.
Thank you. Thank you.
I would like to thanks once again to all the speakers, participants, and the colleagues of Mark. And in the end, I just want to tell all the participants, please write your name and email ID on the chat box so that we can issue e-certificate to you on your respected mail IDs. And please wait for 2 days. You'll get your certificates within 2 days. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, everyone,
Thank
joining
you.
us.
Thank you